Hello, I'm Colin Green, and you are listening to Spike Pit. I've recently just got the Midderlands. I've been going through that, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get myself the Midderlands expanded. Got in touch with Glyn's site, MonkeyBlood Designs. He speedily sent one through to me. So I've had a quick flick through that. It's really good. I like the first one, and I just wanted to expand on that idea because being from the UK, I thought it'd be nice to have a campaign world with kind of almost familiar geography so that I could actually use places for inspiration, you know, in the way that Glyn has himself, I guess. I've got to point out there, Glyn, if you're listening, you've missed a little area on the map. There's a little spot there near St Albans, which you don't call St Albans, of course. Let me have a little look on the old A2 fold-out lovely map. We've got, so Great London, Lunden, then we've got St Albans and Milton Keynes. But between them, there's a little place called Luton, Glyn. Luton. If you need a spelling, I can provide one. But you missed it off the map, mate. I can only think that that's a little oversight on your part. We can forgive you for that oversight. I'll have to produce a little addendum.
To kind of weigh in on the Midderlands idea. I think it's a great idea. I haven't read Midderlands yet. It sounds pretty cool. But perhaps you could work with Glenn Seal on a supplement, a Midderlands, the Forgotten Lands. You know, maybe a place like where you are that had been forgotten, so to speak, is a place out of phase. You know, maybe it's out of time or something like that. And it's been long forgotten, but is slowly reappearing. Or there's a gateway to get to it that needs to be discovered.
I aspire to such ideas. Yeah, where I live, I think it is a bit of a forgotten land sometimes. Yeah, I've got this idea, like I was saying, to come up with a local location. Hatterton-on-Lee idea that I've been knocking about. So yeah, watch this space. The out of phase thing and everything, yeah, that's amazing. I somehow suspect there won't be any collaborations with Glyn Seal on the horizon. He's far too professional for me, I'd imagine. In the daylight hours, the folk of the city of Great London bustle through the drizzle. Its wards are alive with pickpocket, street brawls, puking drunkards, muggings and murder. This is the capital city of the Haven Isle, and those that come here get streetwise quickly. Then the night comes. As the barely seen sun sets over the myriad of tiled rooftops, Great London is plunged into a green and dangerous gloom. Unmentionable horrors lurk in the sewers below the narrow alleys and streets. Assassins sneak across the nightways of the precipitous rooftops above, and beyond the beryl glow where shadows fall, lurk things are hungry. Book 3 of the Midderlands series, The City of Great London. I've just read an excerpt from the back cover of this green A5 hardcover, a familiar format to people that have picked up Midderlands and Midderlands Expanded. Previous books, the Midderlands and the Midderlands Expanded, have talked and kind of focused a little bit more on the swords and wizardry rule set, but quoting Glyn from MeWe, he's looking to open up the market perception a little. What we're looking to get with this third book is kind of more of a toolkit that you can take any of your OSR systems and material, even some of the more modern games such as 5e, and, you know, mash it all together and have a jolly old time. The scale of this book is kind of a zoomed in, focused on the city of Great London. In contrast to the previous releases, you've got the Midderlands with a fairly tight focus look at the kind of what is the Midlands of England. And then for the Midderlands Expanded, obviously we've pulled back the focus and taken in the whole of Britain, really, encompassing some of the stuff around it. So the Serpentlands, Emerald and Gorlandia. I shouldn't really call it Britain because it is the Haven Isles in this setting. And as you can expect, I think the strength and of these books is the the cartography and the illustration and the kind of quirky nature of the writing that Glyn brings to the books. People that have been following his work know he picked up a 2018 Gold Ennie for cartography. All that talent's going to be going into this book. He's sent me a few images to look at, so what I'd like to do is just go through these a little bit and talk about those. If anybody is familiar with the Games Workshop fantasy battle buildings from back in the day, back in the 80s, there were these cardboard buildings. There was a box set called Orcs Drift, was one I had, and there was another one, I think it was called Blood on the Streets, which was like a village pack. The building illustrations that Glyn does very much remind me of this kind of artwork from back in the day. He cites Jeff Wingate as an influence, and Glyn recently did an interview with Jeff, and the links to that interview can be found on MeWe. And if you haven't heard it, give it a listen. It talks about all sorts of stuff, and I'm a big fan. I've talked to Glyn about this in the past. Jeff did the old he was involved in quite a few of the old TSR UK modules and Imagine magazine, where he did a lot of the illustration for the Pelennor setting. Yeah, if you're interested in that, in Glyn's style, you might want to check out some of this Jeff Wingate work. I've got 10 images, and they've got very evocative names, such as the Crowcott, which is a kind of like a tower, I imagine, that houses crows. It looks like the type of thing back in kind of medieval times, and that you'd have dovecots. The Crowcott is kind of a stone building with a slate roof, very typical of Glyn's style. We've also got Faust Coppershine Lending. I'm imagining that's some sort of it's got a classical type facade, and obviously some sort of a lending banking establishment in the great city of London. Next up, we've got Gale's Sanctuary. This is a church-like structure with some pretty solid looking banded doors and a stained glass window, slate roofed again. Then a rather curious looking structure called the Guild of Messengers. It's kind of vaguely triangular in shape, with some strange glowing lanterns that look like they may be powered by gloomium. A row of gargoyles sit perched on a cornice around halfway up the building. There's a limited amount of windows, and perhaps these gargoyles animate and carry the messages for the messenger, or potentially there's semaphore in use with these lanterns, and there's also a kind of a green pyramid-like structure on the top that perhaps flashes, so some type of Midderlands version of Morse code is being used. The fifth illustration I've got is called Odlin's Tower, and this is a very curious looking illustration. It's like an obelisk of rock with what look like windows cut into it, and a curious door with floating stone steps leading up to the door at the base of this obelisk. And there's a bracket hanging out of the side with a hook and a rope, with a pig suspended several feet off the ground. And I must mention, this whole obelisk is floating off of the surface, and atop it is what looks like some sort of spinning pointer type thing. It's got a serpent standard on one end and a spear-like pointer on the other, and it looks like it definitely spins and pivots around in the manner of a clock or compass or weather vane. Very curious, not sure what's going on there, but with a name like Odlin's Tower, it's definitely got a good measure of the odd about it. Next up, we have Peaker's Guard Tower, and the Peakers are like the City Watch, and they are basically the from what I can gather, they're the law in Great London, and as you would expect, they appear to be a fairly corrupt, disreputable bunch of ne'er-do-wells. I would imagine your attempts at bribery and flattery would not fall on deaf ears, and the bribery would be a fairly effective means for avoiding potential incarceration for whatever misdemeanor they decide to plonk upon you. The Fetid Otter. Not sure if this is an inn or tavern, but it is a very first edition Warhammer-esque building in a, what I would say, kind of European half-timbered style. Very nice little illustration suggesting all sorts of nastiness, really. The building has an arch through the centre, so it straddles some sort of thoroughfare. And I do believe that it's Glyn's intention that throughout the book, these illustrations, as you look at a double-page spread, the drawing of the building will be to the left, and then to the right-hand side, you'll get the sort of the floor plans and other little drawings and details. And then in the white space around the pages, there'll be other little details and notes and who knows what other goodies. So I continue with my speculation. The Grey Eye. This is a grey tower. I've seen this on various posts. I think I've seen it on G Plus and MeWe. It's well, I reckon it's some sort of clairvoyant or mystic's abode. We've got a sign hanging outside the front of the establishment with a grey eye. We've got the clay tiled roof, and then a kind of some sort of wood burning stove flue appears on the first level of the building. It appears to one side with a rain deflector on top of it in typical Heath Robinson kind of fashion. Anybody who don't know who Heath Robinson is, I urge you to Google it. It's pretty amazing stuff. Image number 9 is the Watcher's House. This is a strange stone building in the shape of a large head. And notable on the head is a third eye placed in the middle of the forehead. It's got long, big Buddha-like ears, and where the mouth is, there is a doorway above which hangs a green glowing lantern. I imagine this as some sort of cult temple or some such. If I'm honest, I've no idea. The final of the images is the White Crow. This is, like I say, tavern or inn. Hard to say. It's got the sign of a white crow hanging outside the building. We've got a first floor in Glyn's stone style with a half-timbered wattle door and timber-framed upper stories with a nice little arrow-type weather vane atop. We've got a porch out the back furnished with some sort of crow or bird-like creature. And I imagine this is a sort of place where ye olde band of adventurers might meet up before setting off on some forlorn hope, or at the end of a quest, a place to carry out some of that old school carousing. That's about all I've got on the great city of London, Midderlands 3. However, talking to Glyn, it would appear that an old friend of ours, John Large of Red Dice Diaries, is working with Glyn, and they are putting together a low-level adventure for the Midderlands. They will be drawing on the history and the marks left on the landscape by the conquerors or former conquerors of the Midderlands, the Gomans, a Midland version of the Romans. Now, I think that'll be a real treat if John's actual play YouTube videos are anything to go by. If you're interested in the Midlands, I would recommend going to check out John's YouTube channel, Red Dice Diaries, Rose of Westhaven. You will get an untold amount of Midderlands goodness by watching those episodes. John is quite a fan of Lamentations of the Flame Prince in his Rose of Westhaven. I believe that's what he's using. It illustrates the fact that you don't need to run swords and wizardry to use the Midderlands. He's also got a huge back catalogue of all sorts of RPG goodness and some really good comprehensive reviews. If you're interested at all in Fate, he did a real good series on Fate, explaining the ins and outs of the system and how to get the best out of it. In closing, I'd just like to say this is in no way a promo. I just want to give a shout out to some fellow countrymen that are doing all sorts of good work for the hobby. And it's good to see that they're working together on a project. I was delighted to hear that they're putting this adventure together. I know across the pond a lot of my listeners are big fans of the Midderlands.
Great preview. Loved it. Keep up the good work. I too am a fan. I've been I picked up all the stuff and I was in the second Kickstarter. You know, I love Midderlands. I don't know what to do with it. And I think I've told Glenn this too. It's a great setting. I love it. It's very evocative, very creative and imaginative, but I just don't know what to do with it. You know, I don't know what adventures fit in it. So I was just curious if you have any ideas on, you know, I think you could probably do like a Ravenloft thing in there if you wanted, but it'd probably be a lot of work. I'm not sure. Anyway, you got any ideas on adventures that you could throw into Midderlands and run fairly easy?
So in answer to your question, Matt, my first thoughts were to look at the Dolmen Wood stuff from Gavin Norman. I got the two and it struck me that there's almost, there's a very kind of compatible UK-ish vibe about them. Other stuff I thought about was Jason Schultz's stuff. It's got that, I don't want to use the word gonzo, it's sort of more a little bit outlandish, and I can almost imagine an Operation Unfathomable beneath the Midderlands. The other one is UK TSR or TSR UK modules. They've got that, once again, I don't know, I think it's kind of peculiar to folks from the UK that, I don't know, maybe they write in a certain style. It does seem to be a thing, this sort of bit of whimsical, a little bit quirky weirdness. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe it's the gloomium. And that, as they say, is a wrap. Thanks to everybody who called in, making this Into the Pit episode possible. Massive thanks to the pit crew, my patrons over on Spike Pit Patreon. And last but not least, a big thanks goes out to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to old Spike Pit. Take care, and I'll catch you later.